are Pastor Tim's family.
Hi.
What is your name?
I'm Decky Bug.
Show him your face.
I'm Decky.
Decky Bug. I'm Erin. This is Harper.
And I'm Sharon.
And we are coming from Chino Hills, California. And we're about an hour and a half away from all of you in Palm Springs. And we wish we were there, except
Absolutely.
It's so hot, so maybe not. But we are here to welcome everyone to virtual worship this week because we love our Papa. And Hope Palm Springs is a faith community in the desert that is welcoming of everyone. We told him he could have an otter pop after this video. So should we just be done?
Yeah.
Okay, say welcome to virtual worship.
The gospel for today is found in Matthew chapter 16, verses 21 through 28, and reads as follows in Jesus' name. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Then Jesus told his disciples, If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Here ends the reading of the gospel.
From that time on. That's an interesting phrase that begins today's gospel reading. It's another way of saying that whatever has gone on before, whatever you've known or understood up to this point, that things are shifting and from now on will be different. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering and be killed, and on the third day be raised. After Peter's bold statement in last week's gospel lesson, where Peter recognizes Jesus for who he truly is, saying to him, Jesus, you are the Christ, you are the Messiah. Jesus begins to tell the disciples exactly what that means. For to be the Messiah wasn't going to be a bed of roses all the way. And the time wasn't far off when Jesus would suffer the tortures of the damned in Jerusalem and be killed. Well, Peter couldn't take it. God forbid, Lord, this shall never happen. And that's what he says, and then Jesus lets him have it. Get behind me, Satan. Jesus says, because the rock that Peter was at that point was blocking the grim road that Jesus knew he had to take, whether he or Peter or anybody else wanted it that way or not. It was the road Jesus would take because God wanted it that way, and that was that. You aren't on God's side here, Peter, Jesus tells him. Well, Peter would like to have distracted Jesus from his purpose as the Messiah. Peter would like to have remained in those good old days of healing the sick and throwing huge dinner parties on hillsides for large groups of people, to hang on to life with Jesus as he had known it. But Jesus makes it clear, this is the road we're on now, from that time on. It's been a long year for us all. Every aspect of our lives has been displaced, deteriorated or disrupted. What we thought, what we hoped we would be doing now seems to be more like a stolen legacy than a lost scenario. I mean, even in ministry, in our own faith community, it's not where we thought we'd be after a year and a half of work. Entire segments of life's opportunities have not only been missed, but replaced with something different. Whoever is writing this madness of the lives that we're living has obviously left out a few important chapters and is taking the plot in a far different direction than we would like. Life the way it used to be has somehow slipped through our fingers, or maybe more accurately, has been pried out of them. But have you ever thought of it this way? That maybe through it all, a major shift is occurring within us, that we are somehow being transformed for the better? And even beyond our individual selves, that our culture is undergoing some sort of modern day renaissance? Remember, birth may occasionally be painless, but rebirth never is. Still we cry, can't we return to what we've known? Can't we get back to some sort of normal? Well, the answer seems to be more and more, no, you can't. Could the world really be about to turn? From that time on, after the pandemic, from that time on, nothing was exactly the same. After the protests, which we support, and the riots and violence, which we don't, from that time on, things were different. Maybe this is exactly what is needed to capture our attention. Maybe the dismantling of life as we've known it is the only way to separate the broken pieces from the working pieces that need to be put back together again. Maybe the disruption is the only way that we will pay attention to how comfortable we have all become with the status quo. Maybe being out of place is the only way that we will recognize the place we should be in. For maybe, just maybe, God is up to something. Now, to clarify, I don't believe that God sends pandemics to shake up the world any more than I think God condones violence in the streets, whether it be by bad cops or misguided vigilantes. But I don't think God avoids a challenge either. And if God can do something in the midst of the chaos, then God will. For God always uses moments in human history like this to shape the future. And so it's important to recognize that while we may have a plan for dealing with the many issues that we are facing during these days of social and political and medical unrest, that God may just have a plan of God's own. And it may not even be for us to know what that plan is. I mean, after all, Jesus didn't explain to Peter exactly why he had to go to Jerusalem, suffer, and die. Only that was the road he was about to travel. And if Peter wanted to go along, he'd pretty much have to accept that. Faith says in these troubled days of pandemic, systemic racism, and political warfare, God is up to something. And to trust that God's plan is the right plan, and without even completely understanding it, to ask, how is it that I can participate? How is it that I can accompany God into the future, even if that future looks foreboding, as certainly as the suffering and dying part that Jesus spoke of must have looked to Peter? Jesus spells it out in no uncertain terms. If you want to participate in the plan, first let go of your own. Deny yourself. Take up the way of the cross and follow me. Hang on to your life and you are sure to lose it. But let go of your life and you will find it. It's an invitation, but not without obvious resistance by Peter, who I think speaks for all of us. Did you know that caterpillars don't yield themselves to the cocoon at the same rate? When the moment to spin the chrysalis arrives, some of them actually resist and they cling to their larval life. They put off entering the cocoon until the following spring, postponing their transformation a year or more. The state of resisting the process, or clinging to the only life that they have known, is called the diapause. What this means is it's not only you and I that resist change, but nature itself has a built-in resistance to the process of becoming something new and different, of letting go and being reborn. As humans, we all know diapause, a time when we hang on to the self that we've known, when confronted with the possibility of a new life, a new existence, a new challenge, that we make a valiant attempt to save our old life. In the words of one writer, we fear that it is all we have. Even its sufferings are familiar, and we clutch them because their very familiarity is comforting to us. Yet so long as we aim at the maintenance of the present self, we cannot enter the larger selfhood, which is pressing for life. Another way to say it is that we have within us a deep longing to grow and become something new, but we all possess an equally strong compulsion to remain the same, to burrow down into our safe, secure places. As God transforms us from the old self into the new, we sometimes panic. We fight our way back to what's familiar, to what we've known before, back to the same old life that we've always lived. And what we end up doing is aborting God's plan. In today's gospel lesson, Jesus says the same thing a different way. Those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Could it be that what looks like dying is really the way that we finally start living? In other words, we may be on the very verge of something new as individuals, on the very edge of some brand new era in our society. For we must not forget the promise that within every moment is the hope of new life, new possibility. Within every moment in history is an opportunity to write the future with the words, "From that time on." We must remember the butterfly, who before it can ever be what God intends for it to be, must get awfully anxious as it enters the cocoon, not knowing what will emerge on the other side. But on the other side of that dark space for the caterpillar, on the other side of the cold, dark cocoon of the tomb in which Jesus' body was placed, was new life. A new life that begins with the words, "From that time on." God is creating and reordering the universe, but God never does that alone. We are invited to participate. Trust God. If you hold too tightly to the life you've known, you may miss the opportunity. The question is, will we allow ourselves to be the ones God uses to make tomorrow what it will become? For God changes the world by changing people in the world. Or will we get stuck in nostalgia for what was? Know that the scenario God is playing out here in human history may not be as we've planned. The scenario God is playing out in our own lives may not be what we anticipated. But we can always trust that the old life God replaces with the new is always better, always closer to God's intention for us and for everyone to know a greater fullness of life. Would the butterfly ever want to be a caterpillar again? The path forward is daunting, yes, but it is often the path of greatest resistance that leads to the place of greatest promise. From that time on, the gospel lesson begins. Somewhere in the future, we will look back on these days through the rearview mirror of history. By God's grace, may we be able to speak of many good things that emerged because we were willing to see that God was doing something new. And we were willing to be transformed, even if it meant letting go of a life we had once known. May it be said that from that time on, everything was different. Amen.